2022. This evening we have, as usual, a full agenda. We're going to start with public comment. We'll do select board liaison and town manager report after that. We have a public hearing, Bertucci's on a change of manager. Then I'm going to ask the board if they would mind shifting the Camp Rice Moody discussion up to the next item because we have Brad Latham is here and Donna Brewer from Town Council is available at that time also. And rather than have them stay for the whole meeting, I thought it'd be nice to let them go. So if that's okay with folks, we would shift that in. Then Victor, hi Victor, talk about tax rate shift information that's in our packet and kind of explain a little bit more about that. There's a request that we endorse and sign a letter of support for the open space and recreation plan that we saw at our last meeting. Next on the list is a sunset date for Hrac. There must have been one, but we're not able to find it, so this is to formally do it. We'll talk about the Simon's Way Exploratory Committee creation and charge. We will talk about budgets for Historical Commission, Trails Committee, and Town Forest Committee that were in the packet that we've talked about in the past. Future agenda, one set of meeting minutes, and that's our agenda for tonight, which may be light, we'll see. So with that, why don't we move to public comment? Are there folks that would like to speak this evening? I see 3 people who would like to speak. So I see Angela, then Nancy, then Bill.
Okay, I'll go.
Nancy first? Very good.
I'm sorry.
Please come up to the podium.
Oh.
So we have a new podium as a structure here.
Nancy, Dr. Pearl Street. I'm here actually to comment on the item that's been moved up, transfer the deed to Camp Rice Moody. As Girl Scout leader for 12 years, I can't help but be incredibly excited, but I'm also here because the patron saint of Reading Girl Scouts, Lorraine Horn, is out of the country. I know she has sent a letter of support to the town manager, but I wanted to share what she has written for the public record. She is the Girl Scouts of Reading's fairy godmother. As a Reading resident for 32 years, a past town meeting member, 6 years past Reading Cultural Council member, past assistant Girl Scout leader, retired RN, and patron supporter of Camp Rice Moody, a gem in the wood, I would like to weigh in support of the dissolution of the Reading Council for Girls, Inc. I have followed this process through the Girl Scouts of Eastern Mass, meetings of the Reading Council for Girls, Inc., Reading Conservation Committee, past Reading Select Board meetings. As I'm out of the country this week, I would not be able to dial in, but I am able to with this email. What I like about this language, this petition, is the town is protected. The Girl Scouts of Eastern Mass finally get the deeds in the camp. The land is protected with a conservation restriction, and it gives our girls a place in the woods as originally intended. Best, Lorraine Horn, Beaver Road, Reading.
Thank you, Nancy. Angela? Oh.
Bill, do you want to go?
Of course, please, before gentlemen, I can give you consent. I class myself as a gentleman.
Angela Bender, Precinct 5.
And can you give us your, street address for here? Just which street you live?
Orchard Park Drive, sorry. So, with a new town manager, a new select board on board, what I'm really hoping for going forward is increased transparency. It's something that everybody has said that they want to see. And like a lot of people, I'm exhausted by the need to feel vigilant and keeping my eyes on my town government. This is exactly how I feel I need to be with the Simon's Way Committee. I was on town meeting when the town purchased this land. This is supplemental information that was given to the town warrant. It says on March 26, 2019, the select board met in executive session to consider the purchase. The board briefly discussed possible uses of the land for municipal purposes, quite possibly including recreation, athletics. They agreed that a future public process would be used to make that determination. I have put in public records request for that meeting and another meeting where the land was discussed. I have looked at the charge, I saw it before, I wrote a letter, I see it now, and while there are improvements, I don't understand the need for this committee right now. Where in this charge does it say that the committee will consider what the priorities of the town are that have already been established? How is a committee of 7 people going to do that when the town has been in discussion for years? Where does it say that will be factored into it? The first thing it says, the SWAC shall gather input, and it says private-public partnership to develop property. I have no idea how that could have risen to the top in a high-level board that is supposed to be exploring something, how private-public partnership can, to develop how that rose to the top. But over the past week, I've learned more and more that former town officials have always had a recreation complex planned for this site. And it's really disturbing because the more I hear other people talk about this, it seems like there are conversations going on that town meeting was not aware of. And as a town meeting member, I have to go back, and I don't have the minutes of I don't know if there are even minutes for town meeting, if there are, or if it's still recorded. I know that the thoughts of Fields were in place. I don't know that there was a lot of thought about what it would be used for. It was presented to town meeting, in my recollection, as this would be a really good piece of land. There aren't a lot of developable pieces of land for municipal use. For municipal use, if we need it in 1 year, that's fine. If we need it in 3 years, that's fine. If we need it in 5 years, that's fine. If it takes 10 years or 20 years, then we have that very valuable piece of land. It is disturbing to find out as a town meeting member that information might have been withheld. Again, I don't know all of the background. I am looking into more information. As far as the charge to, the SWEC will work with town hall staff to develop and review a request for a proposal for private developers to invest in the property. Once proposals are received with the help of the staff, SWEC will help review and evaluate the submittals to the RFP. And then the deliverable is that the development recommendations would go to the select board. And I just wonder, what ad hoc committee? Are there ad hoc committees that are charged with reviewing RFPs? That seems a little bit out of the, what 7 people from 7 different committees would be able to do. I would think, I could be wrong, but I would think that it is normally staff that review RFPs. And I know the process that we used to develop the Birch Meadow plan, the high level things, the public process was all done in the committee, and then it was passed on to the recreation department, and they took it from there. So I'm just surprised that an ad hoc committee would be reviewing and evaluating submittals to an RFP. I don't wanna have to keep an eye on my government in the way that I feel that I have to with this, so I'm asking you to put this committee on the back burner for now until there is more information about what was said at town meeting, how it was presented to town meeting, and other questions, really valuable questions are answered until this is more fleshed out, and it is disturbing to think that I voted on this, and that it seems like people had plans for this all along, and town meeting was not told about all of that. I haven't looked at the meetings, but from what I understand, from what was given to town meeting, so that is what I am asking, and I don't mean to be rude, but I have an appointment, so I'm not gonna be able to stay.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
I'll be a little bit, getting it, but I will get there.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Brown, 28 Martin Road. 1121456, that's my serial. That's all you're gonna get out of the Geneva Convention. As we're all aware, I think there was a couple parades in town this weekend, originating at the library. I know you people have no jurisdiction over the library, but given the Supreme Court ruling on the flags in Boston the other day, I don't think that the library should be doing this. Because you're gonna, again, I think you're gonna be opening the door to any group that might wanna come in, and when they refuse, no, we're gonna have to have another lawsuit on hand. So I'm gonna suggest very strongly that you might wanna talk to town council and have her give her feelings on it. The other thing that's coming up, I think what a June 19th day is, and there's a large party going on, or a band concert going on at Memorial Park. Again, I think you should go back and look at the deed. Maybe it's time, finally, to go to land court and decide what exactly cannot do at Memorial Park. As you know, right now, there's a basketball court on there, and that is not allowed. So we keep chiseling away at this land that people gave to you, and the town at that time, the selectmen said they would take care of it forever. So I think you guys have an obligation to take care of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak public comment? No. Caitlin, anyone online that would like to join public comment?
I do not believe so, no.
All right, let's move on then to liaison reports and town manager reports. Let me kind of go in the opposite direction from usual. Start with Jackie tonight.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Lots of events in town last weekend, so thank you to all the volunteers and the groups and organizations to make Town Day, friends and family, with the Lions Club, the fireworks, which were amazing and a lot of fun. I had as much fun watching our 3-year-old grandson's face as the fireworks. They both lit up. And last weekend also was the Samantha's Harvest 5K at the high school, which was a great event for a local charity. So thank you for all those volunteers, as well as the Pride events and the Cato Remembrance Tour. Learned a lot, as I think anyone who took that tour did. So thanks also to Public Safety for keeping all those events safe. In terms of liaison reports, just from the Trails Committee, they outlined their summer work. They're planning some upgrades to the Kirchian Woods Trail, and they'll be spreading stones at Wood End to the Cranberry Bog at the town forest to kind of help dry out some of the muddy spots. Whenever that work is done within 100 feet of water, they consult with the Conservation Committee, which was a fun fact. They're also waiting on the results of a grant application to a state trails grant program for Pinedale. And there's ongoing invasives being removed not only at Town Forest, but at the Mallet Soames trails near the Thalen Bird Sanctuary. And the Trails Committee is also thinking about participating in an Ipswich Valley watershed outreach project. And then last night was the CPDC, and just some highlights there. The Commission approved a new sign for the Matera cabin. That sign will match the town hall sign lettering out front here at the entrance. And CPDC is also beginning to consider the first multi-use 40R application since town meeting approved amendments to the zoning bylaws back in April. This is being considered at 25 Haven Street, which is the former Rite Aid near the depot. And there's a proposal for a mixed-use development ownership with 25 units total and 5 units affordable. And so there's some interesting discussion about the applicant, which applied under the old zoning, but CPDC is asking the applicant to highlight where and whenever they've complied with some of the new 40R requirements that town meeting approved in April. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. Karen?
Okay,
So we had I attended a green school building seminar, and a member of the permanent building committee was also on it. It's actually a 6-hour seminar. I managed to be there for 3 hours. And I got the slide deck and I believe I forwarded it to all of you. So the state and the school building administration is really excited about LEED certification. So these new school buildings are gonna be state of the art in terms of meeting our climate law and just in general, reducing the embodied carbon. So I also attended a zero carbon renovation briefing sponsored by the Mass Climate Action Network, which highlighted a number of projects in Massachusetts, some senior housing in Salem, a number of projects in downtown. That they were supposed to have an in-person tour, but unfortunately needed to be canceled or restricted just to legislators. But let me tell you, the challenge of the climate law is that there are, we need to retrofit 1 million existing homes and reduce their carbon. So in an upshot, I'll bring this back to you all later, but this group is advocating that $250 million of the remaining $5 billion ARPA funds at the state level be allocated to communities for retrofitting municipal buildings, schools, senior housing, affordable housing, all of these structures that we have. So I reached out to Senator Lewis's office. They're pretty excited about that and they're gonna do some research and we'll see where that goes. So that's something that we might be able to weigh in on as a select board and as a community. Let's see, okay. Quick update from Senator Lewis on the Green Communities legislation. The Senate hasn't finished for the year. They're very busy. They're committed to getting our legislation done so that all RMLD communities can join green communities easily, and he has asked us all to, this new legislation will require us to go and have town meeting approve this again. So we have passed along our warrant closing date, which is September 13th, so that his office knows and he can share with the rest of the Senate that this bill needs to be done not only to help Reading, but for the other communities that'll be impacted. Okay, so I attended the permanent building committee because Killam was on the docket and ended up tag teaming with Mark because he was double booked that day. So for the first time in 7 years, the permanent building committee is extremely busy. From the water tank to the Killam School project to can't remember the other things. They're really busy and very excited about that. So that's good to see them doing that. So I also did the Pride Day Proclamation, which was an amazing celebration. Council on Aging, tag team with Mark too, so that's interesting. So sometimes, well, a lot of the times select board liaisons are there to listen, and I think at the Council on Aging, you did a lot of updating, which is great because he was bringing back information from recount, so I'll let you go into that. And then today, I had the honor of attending Flag Day at Killam. And the kids were thrilled, and they're a week away from being done with school, and Sean Brandt from the school committee was there as well, and a past principal, so that was just a fun event, and I didn't have to do anything, so that's it.
Cool, thanks. Carlo?
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm not gonna echo everything that Jackie said, but yeah, we had Friends and Family Day. Cato did the Remembrance Tour, we had the Pride Parade, and the, I guess, after party or after celebration on the Common, and fireworks, and it was a very busy weekend. And for as far as liaison goes, Board of Health wasn't a huge agenda, but most of the evening was discussing. I guess I knew we had this, but they're still working on it. A body art license, and what goes with that is an apprentice, and it's amazing how many hours an apprentice has to do to get to be an artist. So it's 1,800 hours of apprenticeship, and some municipalities do 2,400 hours. So and so the Board of Health is still learning and looking at other towns to adopt and work our apprentice program within the license of, having a parlor. So that was the majority of the night. There was a COVID update. Again, this is 10 days old, but the numbers were trending down on active cases and no outbreaks and stuff like that for the schools. And that was really it. And then, attended a few events this weekend.
Awesome, thanks. Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I won't echo Jackie and Carlo again. Scenario, very busy weekend, definitely with everything. The Reading School Committee did Dr. Milichevsky's review, and it was the highest marks for a superintendent since the early 2000s. So that's good to hear that we're on track to just keep carving away, in excellence for our schools. So it's good to hear that. Also, there was the graduation for the seniors, so congratulations to them. And then the Hrac committee is going to meet tomorrow, the Reading ARPA committee, so we'll see the results of the survey. VAS met yesterday for our first meeting. We have another one scheduled for next week. And then Reading Porch Fest is on the 25th, so that'll be before our next select board meeting. So if everyone wants to go to Reading Porch Fest and see where the events are around the area, at my house, 71 Tennyson, from 12 to 3. 2 different bands, so come on by. And then Matera Cabin has the ribbon cutting tomorrow, I believe 3 o'clock. 3, yes, yep. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Chris. So not to reiterate, but to say that it was a great weekend for the town of Reading. It was fantastic with all sorts of different things going on. A few things to update. One, just a quick correction. The board is meeting for our retreat on the 25th of June at 8:30 at the library. And I think we're going to arrange for box lunches so that people can, when we finish up at that meeting, probably 11:30ish, can zip right off to Porch Fest. So the timing will be great to do that. And then we'll be meeting. So that's a public meeting that will be held at the library. The only agenda item relates to our working together. There is an agenda that will be coming out for that soon, and there will be homework. So coming out next week. A couple of meetings that took place. The Council on Aging, actually let me start with Recalc. So Recalc, first of all, and Council on Aging, very appreciative of the support that the town, the board, use of the ARPA money and the opportunity to do that to support the community. They're extremely pleased with that. And their biggest need is in getting hands and feet to be able to, and brains to be able to do things and get some programs set up and do it. And now they're going to be able to do that. So that's fantastic. For Recalc, there is a survey that will be coming out in early September. The final tweaks, I believe, were made to that survey, so be on the lookout for that. There also is the ability to get onto a mailing list for updates on Recalc. It's available on the town website. At Town Day, at Friends and Family Day, there was a QR link that was there, but if anybody wants to be receiving outbound email that basically has updates on the meeting, on the activities of UMass, and the progress that's being made, you can go to the town website, just go to look up Recalc, and you'll find a chance to get onto a mailing list. The Council on Aging met also, again, very appreciative of all the things that are going on. Let me just go back to Recalc for a moment. One of the things that I mentioned at the last board meeting was that I would talk to them a little bit about their thoughts on Simon's Way. And I think we can save that for the Simon's Way discussion in a little bit, but I'll bring that up. The council has a number of interesting events coming up, traditional birthday lunches and things like that. We also have a resident in town, Sally Hoyt, who will be turning 100 years old. Former select board member, involved in the Silverhead legislature, very involved in the town. And there'll be a celebration planned for Sally, which is great. Trust fund commissioners also met. The only hard part for things like that is the volatility in the market going on right now, and what was kind of I don't wanna say easy money, but was kind of consistent cash flow has changed a little bit, but you know, not to worry, it's just not quite as strong as it was. I think that's it. We turn it over to Fidel.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think June, as you're all saying, is it's a great month, and I think it just highlights that our town wants to get together, right? I mean, that we are yearning for connection, and you know, these wonderful events are a good opportunity to come back out. So just to highlight what Matera Cabinet is tomorrow at 3 p.m. The state delegation will be coming mainly because the funding for the community garden was through an earmark. So we definitely want to be appreciative of that. We had a meeting this morning, an internal meeting to plan the select board retreat. We will have ice cream at 8 o'clock in the morning. Just
Why are you looking at me?
just so you know, just so you know, and we're planning a few fun events like the you know, the fall exercise where you know, we'll catch each other. Yeah.
You mean the push one?
So
I haven't heard it referred to that way before.
the fall exercise. Yeah, we're hoping that it's a good event. It's a good team building event as well. And Porch Fest, of course, Alan Foltz and the entire crew are doing a fantastic job planning that. Just I emailed the board, but we the town of Reading received a grant to complete installation of additional fiber for the town, and it was for $192,000. So we're starting that work.
$1,000, amazing.
Very nice. Also wanted to highlight that it is being shared in the news, but the opioid settlement money is starting to come in. I expect the first payment to come in the next 60 days. Reading will be getting around $58,000 in this first year, and a schedule was published of, you know, the approximate annual amounts. But what's exciting is that it is going to create a somewhat of a steady stream of funding for the coalition, right? So the coalition will be coming to the select board hopefully on July 19th and do a staff report and really highlight, you know, the amazing work that is going on the Killam School. So that's obviously a hot topic. The school committee at their last meeting voted to recommend 2 school committee members, and I believe that those names will be public at their next meeting, as well as the 5 members of the permanent board committee, permanent building committee, our town treasurer, and a member of the select board as the executive body of the town. So in our next meeting on June 28th, we will add an item to formally vote which member of the select board will be nominated for the school building committee. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I have one thing.
Please, sure.
Sorry. I forgot I mentioned, it's not a park-related thing, but I did meet Eddie, the new parking enforcement officer.
Yeah.
And he is enforcing parking. He seems
Thank you for the heads up.
a very nice guy, but he's got a pad and paper. I don't know, it just seems like,
Is it an orange pen?
no, the tickets are pink, I believe,
Okay.
though. I haven't got one yet, but we'll see how that goes.
Great.
But yes, so everyone knows parking is being enforced again.
As it should be. That's great.
Yep.
Thanks for the update. Okay, so let's open the public hearing on the Bertucci's change of manager. Please, Chris.
Yes, so I move to open the hearing for the public hearing for Bertucci's change of manager.
Hello,
So hang on just one second if you would. So is there a reading of the hearing notice? Is
I
that,
don't,
yeah, so I think we need to do that.
yep, you can do that as well.
I didn't see it in here. It's not in the packet.
No, I don't have it here either.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you able to read that?
Read that,
I'm not.
Yeah, perfect. All set then, Mark?
Please.
To the inhabitants of the town of Reading, please take notice that the Select Board of the town of Reading will hold a public hearing on June 14th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the Select Board Meeting Room at Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. We're also available remotely on Zoom to act on a change of manager for an annual all-alcohol restaurant liquor license at Bertucci's Restaurants LLC, located at 45 Walkersburg Drive, Reading, Mass. Copy of the proposed documents regarding this topic will be in the Select Board packet on the website at www.readingma.gov. All interested parties are invited to attend the hearing in person or remotely via Zoom, or may submit their comments in writing or email prior to 6 p.m. on June 14th, 2022 to townmanager@ci.reading.ma.us by the order of Fidel Maltez, Town Manager.
Thanks, Chris. So the public hearing is open. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on this issue? I'm not seeing any hands in the room. Caitlin, is there anyone online that would like to speak?
I have the new manager here, if you'd like.
So maybe just see if there's any members of the public first. No, is anyone?
There's no
raising
one
their
else
hand?
here.
So just to be clear, folks, if you would like to speak on this topic, please raise your hand if you're online. Give them a moment to respond. All right, we're not seeing any comments or hearing any comments. Should we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing regarding Bertucci's change of manager request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Any discussion? Not appearing. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? We are 5-0. The public hearing is closed. Mr. McLean, can you introduce yourself to us, please?
Hi, my name is Charles McLean.
McLean, sorry.
I've been with Bertucci's for 13 years. I've been in the restaurant business for 44 years. So I think Bertucci's Reading will be in good hands with my leadership.
Awesome. Where are you coming? You've been with Bertucci's just in a different location, and so you're coming to Reading now?
Right, yeah, I was formerly at the PB location and the Beverly location.
Fantastic. Board members, questions?
Just your typical question, Mark. You can.
Anyone else before I come in with my comment? Okay, great. So, Mr. McLean, sorry for mispronouncing your name. I've got it now. So, welcome to Reading. Very pleased to have you here. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is in being very welcoming, but also in enforcing our alcohol laws. And we really appreciate your diligence in making sure that takes place. And given that you've been in other locations, I know you appreciate how important this is. To this board, it's very important. We take it very seriously, and we are the licensors, I guess. So we really would appreciate your diligence on that matter, and we wish you, good success. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't, sir.
Awesome. All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the change of manager request for an annual all-alcoholic liquor license for Bertucci's Restaurants LLC at 45 Walkersburg Drive, Reading, Mass.
Second.
Thanks, Carlo. Any discussion? All set, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? We are 5-0. Congratulations and welcome to Reading, Mr. McLean.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
See you at Bertucci's.
Good luck, thanks.
Welcome. Hi.
Is it okay with board members if we take the Camp Rice Moody article out of order? Bring it up now? All right, great. All right, Fidel, do you want to introduce it? And then
Yes,
we'll
absolutely.
go from there.
and Donna Brewer from Town Council should be online, and I know Mr. Brad also. So I'll just very quickly say that our Town Council received this request. It's a motion to dissolve the Reading Council for Girls and transfer all assets to the chapter, the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts. Essentially, what is being requested of us is that we support the motion, so we'll be asking for a vote to authorize that any legal documents associated with this request be executed. I don't know.
Thanks. Where should we go from there? Donna, do you want
Sure.
to
Yeah.
comment?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I can summarize where we are. Fidel, did you share with everybody the draft complaint?
Yes. Yep. It's in the packet.
Okay, so a little bit of background. So since 2018, the Reading Council for Girls has fortunately been working for dissolution. It is a public charity, and therefore its dissolution and the transfer of its assets have to be approved by the Attorney General's office, and then they go to court. So what they try to do when this unfortunate circumstance happens is find a new charity that can, or a previously existing charity, but new to these assets, to try to take over the assets and mirror as closely as possible the charitable purpose of the original nonprofit that's being dissolved. In this case, what they're doing, so they would like to transfer the property and a small amount of cash, really nothing substantial, to go to the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts, who will continue to use the property for recreational purposes. There is a conservation restriction on at least part of the land. Brad Latham can let us know more details about exactly where it is, but the thought is that if for some reason, at some point, the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts can no longer maintain or can no longer hold the property or no longer wants to do so, then the property would be offered to the town. It is not something that the town has to accept either now or then. It is just an opportunity that the town will have to get this gift of land if for some reason it cannot be used for Girl Scout purposes by the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts.
Thanks. Or do you want to stop there just for a sec? Board members, any questions so far? Carl?
Thank you. You answered the question I was gonna raise, but I guess I'm gonna raise a question that relates to what you just said, which I was curious because I couldn't find the language in all those pages of documents. So I'm guessing the land is deed restricted, or it's not deed restricted?
It's not deed restricted that I know of. It is a conservation restriction.
Okay, on parts of the land.
Either parts or whole.
Okay.
Again, Brad Latham can tell us for sure. I have not seen the conservation restriction. That's why I can't answer that.
All right, thank you. So in your scenario, if the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts decides that, they want to move on or not use that land anymore, and we have, in essence, the first right of refusal to accept it as a gift, and say we do accept it, is there language that it always has to be a charity, or the town at some future date, 10, 20, 30 years, or never, can do something else with the land?
So we wouldn't accept it for a charitable purpose, but we do accept it for open space and passive recreation purposes. It is limited to that. And so if we wanted to do something more extensive than that, we would need to go to the general legislature because it will count as Article 97 land.
All right, thank you.
That might be a good opportunity for Mr. Latham to join.
For the record, my name is Brad Latham. I like your podium, by the way. It's a nice touch. Hi, Donna. When the Girl Scouts determined, or should say the Reading Council determined they could not afford to maintain this because of staffing and so forth, it determined the best party to use this was the Girl Scouts. They've used it for the last 50 years. They actually have a long-term lease that doesn't expire for 30 years from now. So they pretty much have this tied up. They did agree, however, to not stand in the way when the council decided to put a conservation restriction on the property. So there is a perpetual conservation restriction. It really has two standards to it. The outer ring, which is wetlands, has a wetland conservation restriction. The inner ring has a recreation restriction. So that there is a potential of some sort of a passive recreation that could take place there and will not interfere with the ongoing use by the Girl Scouts. It was the thought of the council, who are all already residents, that if in fact the Girl Scouts cannot use this for 2 successive years, other than situations due to COVID and that sort of a situation, that the town would have the opportunity to take over the property and own it, and if it wanted to, use it for recreational purposes. As Donna said, there's no compulsion on the town to do so, but it was felt that would be beneficial to the town. But that's why the town is a party. It would not be a party to this transaction other than the fact that the town could someday benefit from this if the worst happened as far as the Girl Scouts go. That's pretty much the reason behind it.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Karen?
Yeah, I have an update. I needed to get out of the office earlier this week, so I went over and camp directors Renee and Amanda were kind enough to give me a quick tour of the property, and I also was able to speak to Hrac O'Connell.
Right.
So here's what I saw. I was worried. Like everything else, we've been on a roller coaster in the last couple of years. So they gave me the tour. The building is well maintained. It's a lovely space. It's a flexible space. Some people already are able to rent it out, like for bridal showers, they mentioned. There's a beautiful outdoor pavilion, there's a pool. They are ready, they're like ready for business as usual. They'll be advertising for campers, so I was reassured from that perspective. And Hrac, who has long been involved with this local organization, is also still on the finance committee of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts in Boston. So he was able to tell me that I know this has been in the works maybe back until 2016, and so now it's just coming before the select board. But he was able to report that they had the best cookie sales ever, and he felt that they are financially in a good state. So he also mentioned that the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts have in effect been managing this property since 1980. So aside from this paperwork, I felt reassured that it's well maintained. This is a stable situation, and for the future, I see no downsides. But just wanted to share that update with you all.
I did reach out to Lorraine Horn, who sent us a note just to make sure that she was in the loop, and she most certainly is. She knows exactly what's going on. I just want to make sure it wasn't a surprise. And so all good on that. Okay. Oh, sorry, I saw the hand.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Chris?
Just my comment is, it's been with the Girl Scouts for the last 50 years, and it'll be for the next 50. And if not, then we would take it over, whatever scenario happens, but hopefully that doesn't come about, so.
Super, Mr. Brown,
That's the second building.
can I ask you to stand up here, please? I'm sorry. Everyone gets the benefit of hearing your comment.
My wonderful voice. That's the second building that's been on that site. The first one was destroyed by fire. And I don't know whether there's any coincidence or not, but my cat disappeared for 25 years and he finally came back the night that burned.
Wow.
I don't know what happened, but boy, I slept through the whole fire, so it's right down the street from me.
Okay then.
I'd like to ask a follow-up to that.
No, let's stay on topic. Okay, so do you have a motion to take action here?
Yes. Move that the board authorize Fidel Maltese to execute an assent to a motion for entry of interlocutory order and an assent to a motion for entry of judgment and all other documents necessary to support the transfer of Camp Rice Moody from the Reading Council of Girls, Inc. to the Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts, Inc. under the terms and conditions set forth in the draft complaint for voluntary dissolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jackie. A quick question, Donna, I'm assuming that you provided that language? Is that
I
correct?
did, yeah.
Okay, great, sounded somewhat legalese.
I don't understand any of the
Interlocutory,
language, so, yeah. Donna wrote that verbatim.
interlocutory, inextricably intertwined.
There you go, there you go. Any discussion other than the definition of interlocutory? Great, okay, then we are ready for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, we pass 5-0. Thank you, folks.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Brad. Thank you, Donna. Thanks for
Thank
coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, good night.
Good night, too. Let's move on to discussing tax rate shift. Victor.
I know you just bumped me because you want me to stay here long and just be able to knock your socks off with
Yep.
tax rate shifting options for the
Ready.
town of Reading.
Just take a moment to get ready for this.
Favorite topic.
Well, we do have a slideshow for the folks at home.
Yep, okay, I've got to get. And it is on the packet too.
It's page 15 in the packet, folks.
Okay. I have my own copy here, I'm not even gonna try to read that. Now, what gives Reading and municipalities in the Commonwealth the ability to shift? It falls under Chapter 200 of the Acts of 1988. It allows cities and towns to give residential property taxpayers greater tax relief by adopting a shift of the property tax burden from residential taxpayers to your commercial, industrial, and personal classes of property, provided certain parameters are not exceeded. Some communities can shift to 150%, some can shift to 175%. That's governed primarily by the size of the CIP class of the respective community. Other communities may have other limitations on this shift factor, like bumping up against their tax levy ceiling. That's gonna inhibit their capacity until such time as they bank some levy to move the ceiling upwards. But Reading is limited primarily because of the size of the CIP sector. On the next couple of pages, I took the info from 2022 because I'm nowhere close to producing 2023 info as of yet. That comes towards the end of the year. But basically showed you at each shift increment. And it's important to note that a few years ago, as a result of our Reading senior discount, the select board opted a nominal shift of 1.02, simply because to keep the math consistent and not try to come up with split numbers that were not really tenable, and the desired results could not be guaranteed going through DOR approval of our tax rate recap sheet. So this kind of gives us an idea, our tax rate's gonna be all right. We're gonna have a slightly higher commercial rate with a lower residential rate. But the next couple of pages shows you at each interval, from a single tax rate up to 1.5, the difference for the residential taxpayer at each shift point saves about $7. And on the commercial side, at the median value for 2022, which is $768,200. The average value is around 1.9 million, but when you walk down the street, you're not gonna have commercial properties on Main Street, you know, for the most part. Your small rentals or what have you be valued at that, so my unit of comparison, more realistically, that we can see, feel, touch, is that median value of 768. The impact to those properties with each change is an increase of $100. Now let's see, we flip 1, 2, 3, 4. Flip down 5 more, let's see. Shifting the tax rate Reading, I think it's the one right before that, please. Perfect.
Page 21 for us.
Okay. You see at a shift of 1.02, our residential tax rate and the average residential tax bill, and the median CIP tax bill. I just did some easy scenarios. The next one presents it at 1.05 of a shift, which would move the shift up 3 points from 1.02 to 1.05. Results in a 3-cent decrease to the residential rate and a 40-cent increase to the commercial rate. Basically saves the average single-family taxpayer $21, which isn't a lot, but does increase on the median value, again, of $768, about $310. So when you think about shifting in such small increments, it saves the residential taxpayers little, but the impact passed along can be great. And in any thought to thinking about doing this, it should be done very slowly, very incrementally, which is how I designed this for you folks, just to get an idea of what it would be like. If we go to the next page, this is what our neighbors are doing. As you can see, Stoneham, Wakefield, Wilmington, Woburn are all at 175 and all have shifted 175 for many, many years. Just Reading and North Reading are the only ones without, I say Reading doesn't have a shift because it really doesn't. It was done as an accommodation. If we didn't have the senior tax relief, we'd be a single tax rate community. And Linfield, yeah, I know something about that. Their max shift rate is a little bit funky at 1.51. They had some issues with their levy ceiling, did the right thing to move things around. They're slowly getting that number up. And what the select board does over there is try to determine a split that's proportional with valuation changes. So if residential properties are up 7%, commercial up is 2%, they leave it to now me to figure out what increments we should recommend for a shift over there. And below are the average single-family tax bill and single-family parcel counts for those communities as well. The next page, you know the classification, for those of you who've been on the board for a few years, you know the classification hearings I present with all this extraneous data on these communities that, you know, personally I feel don't have any true one-to-one comparisons with Reading, but I throw them in there anyways. This seems to be the hodgepodge of what a board 100 years ago felt were comparable communities, and here's what they do with their shift rates, just so you can handicap our competition. Now the last page. Again, we do have a shift capacity up to 1.5, and in no way, shape, or form would it be good to even entertain anything like that. Tax policy should be slow. By design, it should be even-handed. Once you make a change, that change is anticipated each and every year going forward. But the most common reasons communities will shift the tax burden. Most obvious is to afford residential taxpayers the lowest possible share of the tax burden. That's how it is in other communities that I work in that shift to the maximum. And as I mentioned in Linfield, the other reason is to equalize the disparity of significantly rising residential values compared to a relatively flat commercial industrial sector. So, not looking for a decision tonight. I mean, provide this information just as food for thought. Think about it. And then when we come to you in October with our classification hearing, dig this out. And you'll see what it looks like. Plus, my hearing will have all the new data in it, and you'll have a similar breakdown in it to consider, what you may wanna do. But any action you take, make sure it's slow. If you move something 2%, I would say let it sit for a couple of years while that impact is absorbed in the commercial, industrial, and personal sector. So that's all I have unless anyone has any questions.
Board members, Chris?
How are all those other towns at already 1.5 to begin with? It just seems like every town on this list is like 1.5 already, and we're still at 1.02. Like, what is, they didn't listen to you and just changed it one day?
Well, 1988, I was airdropping big stuff out of big cargo jets, but that's when the law was enacted, and that's when Wakefield began. Their thought, their board at the time was, we want to save residential taxpayers. We want to afford them the lowest possible share of the tax burden, never look back. That's how a lot of these communities, they've been doing it since they were given the ability to do it. Other communities have been slowly moving. When I worked in Melrose, there was a bit of a shift, maybe like 1.3. But then they've seen that shift in the past 20 years go up to 1.6 and change, I think. It's all a matter of where the board wants to be. And my own view is that with the disparity of values, it's something to be looked at, not necessarily moved on in big, bold strokes, but something worthy of consideration, 1%, 2 or 3 each year, yes or no, and if you do something, leave it there for a while.
So my other question is, so you have the average single-family value here of 702,600,
Mm-hmm.
and the median commercial is 768,200,
Mm-hmm.
and that's based off 2021.
Those are 22 values which use sales from calendar year 2020.
So not even 21 or 22 yet.
Not yet.
Um,
Those will be the numbers I use for 23. When I present numbers to you, they're a year behind by design, using sales that can be up to 2 years old.
Yeah, because the disparity there is 60 grand over on the commercial, but when I saw the number, I was like, there's no way these homes are going for like 2 million here now. So,
To compare apples to apples, I'm doing an average single-family value, which is the unit of measure the state uses in all their reporting. I called an audible by using the median value, which for commercial properties, which is a better reflection of your small business owner.
yeah, just seeing ratios like that, the numbers that you're mentioning to me makes sense. So.
If we had used average commercial value, that value would be about $1.9 million.
Yeah, and changing the increase from 102 to 105 or whatever the scenario, it's proportional to way it is here until we see the figures in October, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
I could just add a question to your comment, Chris. So once you have the next data,
Yep.
a year or so, is the trend that you highlight here continuing? In other words, residential property values are going up very dramatically, commercial not so.
As a result of this past revaluation I did, which was our 5-year reval cycle, and thank goodness I have all the extra supervision by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts every 5 years on these. We did move commercial, I think around 5%. Because it was due for an adjustment. Now it becomes a matter of, okay, what's sold? What is my commercial property owners telling me vis-a-vis their income and expense statements? What regional data is telling me for rentals, expense ratios, things of that nature, that will determine what the increase will be there. But residential, it's there all day long. I mean, I'm the assessor, and I'm just trying to keep up with what values are doing, and not try to hammer one class over another class, to be fair across the board.
Thanks. And board members, drop of history, so I can remember about 5 years ago is when I think the board started to talk a bit more about this idea and what was gonna happen. There was a pretty animated discussion about it. And decisions have been made since then to be very modest, to be very supportive of business. And then I think when COVID came upon us, the board's feeling was would not be the time to be making any kind of a big change here, because we need to be supportive of our local businesses. So I think it's timely to have the discussion, to think about it. Anyway, that's the benefit of a little bit of history. Karen?
Yep, that is my recollection. We wanted to be supportive of businesses during the pandemic. And also there was the major federal change that state and local taxes are now deductibility for residents are now capped at $10,000. And I'm looking at these averages and they're all over 9, and there's so on the commercial side, that's a straight business expense. They do not have that limitation. It's always deductible. So the increase is mitigated. So keeping that in mind, that's the other major tax change.
Jackie, did I see your hand, or am I just, I'm sorry, I'm seeing stuff out of my peripheral vision's going.
No.
And if you recall, when I do present the data in October, you do get a similar breakdown like this, and basically, okay, you have it 2 weeks before and have your discussions and figure out what you wanna do. The only thing I ask is no surprises. It's a lot of math.
And maybe just add one other thing too, just with history and your comment on it also. One of the things that we would love to do, with no disrespect to the very, very large properties that we have in town, is to ask them to pay more than their fair share by comparison. But the law does not allow that. It has to be applied equally.
And they had a Sharpie that could say, just these.
This one? Yeah, so that's we have wishes. People talk about, large developments and, oh, wow, they can support everything. No, that's not how the tax system works. So that's another factor that I think we have to keep in mind.
Yes, another one. So if the single family value and the median commercial value are close to identical, are you still recommending that we go on a higher rate on the commercial end?
I'm not recommending.
Or are you
I'm advising.
advising?
I'm
Would you
providing you
advise
various scenarios.
if it was close to identical, not a obviously glaring 60 grand, which is a couple percentage?
I don't think those respective values have any connotation, because again, residential is an average value, that one's a median value. Again, the commercial value would be $1.9 million, and yeah, the increase would be a lot more, but it was just my feeling that most of the shops you go into might be standalone or have 2 businesses. Those things aren't over $1 million in value, particularly on Main Street, which is the small business owners' bread and butter, I guess, best way to put it.
And I think Karen's point is an excellent one also, in terms of the tax to CIP is a business deduction. So the impact of the change is not complete. It's mitigated by the tax difference, whatever tax rate they're in. So not that we're loving doing things, but the town is going to be facing continued needs to support the operating budget. There are potential capital projects and debt exclusions that may be coming along also. So even though $20, $30, $50 doesn't seem like much of a decrease to a homeowner, if the number of millions of dollars that's moving.
The cumulative effect over the years adds up.
This was fantastic. Thank you. I really enjoyed this. I've
Happy
been
to
reading the
oblige.
packet. It was enjoyable. Thank you for all this hard work.
And at any time, feel free to reach out with any questions. I'm always happy to bore anyone about tax policy and tax rate setting stuff here in the lovely town of Reading. Yes, Reading.
And Victor, do you think the timing for having the updated figures will be in October when we need to make our decision?
It'll be in October when we do classification, because at that time I have to have state approval of the numbers. The accountant has to do, Sharon has to do her thing before we know exactly what numbers to plug in. But in October, yeah, you'll have everything.
Okay. And then you'll be asking us to make decisions in that
Yeah,
time frame.
and you'll have it 2 weeks in advance, so, you know, again, ask me any questions, any way I can be helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
Thanks, folks, have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Well, thank you, Victor. Alrighty, next on the agenda, vote to endorse and sign letter of support for updated open space and recreation plan.
Excellent. If you can go to page 25, Jackie, in the back, that'd be great. So we saw the open space and recreation plan last week. I mean, it's a hefty plan. In order to keep our availability of applying for grants, we have to do this plan and it has to be endorsed by the board. So this is a similar version to what was signed at the last plan, and we're just asking the board to formally endorse the plan and allow the chair to sign this endorsement.
Questions, comments? No, I thought the plan looked good. It was great that they do dovetail with things like Birch Meadow in terms of those activities, although it's at a higher level on things. No questions, comments?
Good to go.
We have a motion?
Yep, move to endorse Reading's open space and recreation plan as presented to the select board on May 31st. And the select board chair provide a letter of support on behalf of the select board to the Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Any discussion? None appearing. Let's take a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? We are 5-0. All right, so I guess I will then sign that note. All right, back to the top here. Vote sunset date for Hrac, June 30th, 2022. So maybe drop a background. I believe that every committee that we establish has some kind of sunset date associated with it. That said, couldn't find it.
We looked everywhere. We
The permanent committees?
The ad hocs.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, sorry, when we establish an
Oh,
ad
you're
hoc
right.
committee,
It's a
we
really
usually,
old one.
part of the
Right.
description is that it will sunset on such and such a date, and then we'll extend it if that makes sense to extend it. And I was certain that we had done this back in probably 2 years ago, was my recollection of it. But after searching, nada.
we searched. I even called Ann Landry to see if she remembered. Caitlin, what she found is that there was a sunset date for the committee that was in charge of creating the position, right? So that
That was
maybe-
definitely
that had a
an ad
date.
hoc committee.
Exactly.
I
Exactly. So
thought
that's
this
the one
was
that
a
had
permanent committee, so, okay, but it was, yeah, I couldn't even tell you when it was created.
So that's a good question. Is it a permanent committee?
It is in the select board policies. It's not in the charter. It's in the select board policies.
Yeah.
Change policy.
Change policies is within your purview. It's your policies.
So at one point I had been approached by someone who was saying, hey, is there gonna be a sunset date? With an expectation that there would be, and I think I wouldn't say desire necessarily, but that was the plan. And then I was like, no, it sunsets by itself, you don't have to do anything else. And then it came back up and found its way to the agenda. So apparently we can't find a date, so I think this is probably belt and suspenders, just to make sure that in fact there was, whether or not there was a date, to establish the date and to do it by June 30th, which I believe is the expectation of the Hrac members. The plan, as I understand it, is that PAIRS, which is now being established in Department of Equity and Social Justice, DES, I think I got it, is forming a committee where Hrac members will be a part of that group. Similar to the way that the coalition is structured in terms of having kind of board members, if you will. So that it's not that we're kind of removing a function of government, but rather it's moving to the PAIRS structure. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions or comments. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. I've spoken to the chair and the vice chair the past few months, and they're really excited about the new format. Again, they were having quorum problems, open meeting law problems, meaning the quorum's so small, they didn't have enough members to meet and get work done, and the burden of that. So they are very supportive and excited about the pyramid model and being able to focus on the important work versus the admin.
Caught up in the.
Yeah.
Cool. No further comments. We have a motion.
Move to set a sunset date for the Human Rights Advisory Committee for June 30th, 2022.
Excuse me, is it human relations, I think?
Human relations.
Sorry, what did I say? It is
Human
rights?
Oh, human relations.
Human Relations
yes.
Advisory
Relations
Committee.
Advisory Committee.
Sounds like the right one.
Yep, move to set a sunset date for the Human Relations Advisory Committee for June 30th, 2022.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Karen. Any discussion? None appearing. We're ready for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. All right, let's discuss and vote on Simon's Way Exploratory Committee creation and charge. So in the packet, page 26. Oops. So this was revised, I think, since the last meeting. Some discussions took place in between. So there are some changes that are proposed here. I have some comments. Other board members have comments, thoughts on where we are?
I don't need to go first, but
Well, I can dig in if that makes sense
Okay,
as kind of a starting point. So a couple of things on here. One, having had a chance to read it, I think that there are a few tweaks that I would suggest. Perhaps the biggest one is that I think in the purpose, I think what we would be looking for, we the full board, are options to come out of this group. Not one, but multiple. And to explore what those could look like so that the full board has the benefit of kind of understanding them a bit more and see what's happening with them. As it's written right now, it seems to be very focused on just one. And so my suggestion is that we talk about best potential uses, plural, and make it clear that the expectation of this committee is to come back with a series of options rather than one. And I think about feasibility studies and other activities that might take place, and they come back with options so that they can be further evaluated, so that we can solicit more input, and the full board has a chance to kind of weigh in on preferences and ideas. So my suggestion is that we talk about uses, plural, as kind of one comment, and the essence would be return to the select board with multiple options for consideration, and there could be multiple. So that's kind of one suggestion I have. Another suggestion is in looking at under the charge. This is the second page of it, so 27 in the packet. The committee shall consider the following. I think that the number one set of considerations is kind of the community and serving residents. And I really believe that needs to be the number one thing that we list up here. Number two would be using public funds and grants, kind of where it is now. So I'd almost shift 1 and 3 in terms of what's here. So the notion of a public-private partnership certainly can be an option. But I don't think that it there's been no discussion that would put it into a kind of a primary position, and it actually felt kind of awkward to me that it was the first thing that was listed. So I think serving the community is really kind of what this needs to do most importantly. Third suggestion, I think that the deliverable, I think maybe there's the wrong word. It says it'll begin its work by December 22nd. I think from my perspective, that would be problematic because that implies it could start tomorrow. I think after having discussions with Recalc, the Council on Aging, when I gave an update, kind of had a lot to say about this also. So maybe let me kind of share some of the feedback from them. Number one, they want a seat at the table, and I think I see in here is kind of a piece of that. Number two is that they're very concerned that this effort could impact the momentum that's going on right now in terms of the development of multi-generational /senior/community center. In that, that would be very problematic. What it needs to do, I think, is kind of work with it, kind of dovetail with it, if you will, so that the momentum is not interrupted, things are continuing, and some options for this area could in fact involve or be solutions for that center, senior multi-generational community center. If this were to get ahead in kind of development, that wouldn't be guaranteed, and that's actually something that I think we talked a little bit about at the last meeting, but I think that's a really, really valid concern. I think this most certainly should not get ahead of that. There's not pardon the use of the word here, but there's not a fire here in terms of getting this done. If it's happens a little bit later, again, it's not changing things drastically. I think that the process is going so well through activities we've talked about with Recalc, the support that was shown at town meeting, that's a project that kind of is moving ahead. We know that Killam is going to have its own trajectory fairly soon also. That's a lot of stuff to already be working on. I would want to make sure that this doesn't kind of move ahead or go in a different direction. And I think by talking about options, or use as plural, and options that would come back to the board, by having it start not earlier than December of 2022, and still, I think those other dates probably can still work, August and November. And then there was another question about reviewing RFPs and things like that I think it really, I think, is on staff and town council and others to be kind of going through the RFPs to make sure they're responsive, to see what they look like, and then those can be considered as, as part for SWAC. But I don't think they're not the ones reviewing the RFPs per se, but kind of the output from the RFPs. So those, I think, were my biggest comments. I think looking at the membership structure as proposed, the only thing that still is in my mind not resolved is if there should be community members that are not affiliated with a committee that are part of this group also. There may in fact be one. I think it's discussed here as kind of a senior advocate appointed by the Council on Aging. So I'm not sure that is even the right language. Ex officio appointed by the council. I'm not sure is right language, but yeah, I think the question in my mind still is what's the exact right composition here? I think Hrac, CPDC, conservation, PVC, member on the senior community makes sense. Anyway, that was a lot of discussion. Sorry. Other thoughts?
I just have one quick one, just referring to the RFP. I'm reading it that it says will work with Reading Town Hall staff. I guess I'm just trying to understand, does that not, you want it expanded, or you want it to say less and to say more? It says will work. So I think, I don't know, I was trying to.
Yeah, to understand. I think I'm actually reading it as you are.
Okay, because it sounded like you were inferring that it didn't say that in a way. Not exactly, but that they would go rogue and just review RFPs. And
I think I'm reading it as you are.
Yeah,
So, yes.
For the record, I mean, the town manager is the appointed entity as the chief procurement officer, but we do have a full-time procurement officer, right? And so everything has to go through her, and it's Allison Jenkins, and she's on as a staff member who's supporting. The RFP, would of course be written by her, but the legal language is written by her, right? What we're looking for is what is going to be important to have this input. I mean, I checked with town council, right, and asked if there was any conflict with having residents be part of a committee that reviews RFPs, and there is no conflict, no statutory limitations to that. Once it is publicly procured, the submittals can be reviewed by any committee.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think that Carlo was right on that. I might suggest that we tweak the last sentence. It says if public development is deemed appropriate. I'm not sure, I think that it's more, if a public development option is to be explored. It's not
Private,
to,
you mean private,
sorry, no, public actually.
public is us.
Yeah, so the very last sentence of that paragraph, if
Okay.
public development is deemed appropriate. It's not really to the committee to deem it appropriate. It's if public development is, I think it basically says to consider public development options, the committee.
I know what you're saying, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right on that
Yeah.
part, I think, yeah,
Yeah, we
it's
tweak
not,
those words.
and, yeah. I don't know if Caitlin's taking notes, I don't know who's taking notes, but yeah.
So I think we incorporated most of them already. So we switched 1 and 3. Let's see. We added the committee shall begin its work in December of 2022, and then we added shall submit multiple options for development recommendations. I did not catch the last one, Mark. So you're saying
It's
if
that.
public development is deemed appropriate, but you're saying
Yeah, appropriate isn't the right word. The committee's charter isn't to decide appropriateness of
is
things.
deemed
The best?
No, I don't think it's
No?
the best
Okay.
either. I think in pursuing public development options, the committee can offer recommendations for potential funding.
pursuing. So yeah, in pursuing public development.
Jimmy, just 1 sec. I see Hrac in the audience. I'm not sure if you're here for our meeting and later topics, great. If it was for the Camp Rice Moody.
Day late and dollar.
Not to your fault,
I
not to your
can't
fault.
answer on the dollar. It was passed 5-0 by the board.
Thank you.
And I was able to share your feedback, at least in your stead. Thank you very much
Thanks for coming in.
for all your hard work.
Thank you.
The rush over from the Reading Scholarship
Yeah.
Foundation meeting.
Pardon me for interrupting. I just thought that's why they were here. I want to make sure. And Emily, I know you probably said something to them too. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Did the Rice Moody property already come up and that's all squared away?
Yes, the board voted 5-0 in support of the document that was presented.
We switched the.
We took it out of order, sorry.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, we appreciate it. Let's see, legal fees.
Sorry, so we lost you, Martin. So if pursuing public development options, and we erase
Yeah,
is deemed appropriate.
right.
The committee will offer recommendations for potential options. If pursuing
Can I
development.
suggest, it might be better just to shift the sentence, start with the committee. The committee will offer recommendations, or the committee may offer recommendations for potential funding options for public development.
Thanks, Aiden.
Might be cleaner.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions, comments? Here.
And there were best uses in a couple of places, I noticed. We weren't real specific about changing best use to best uses.
Oh, sure.
So you covered a lot of the points, thank you, good job. One thing that has been raised by a couple of residents is that the format that we have, which was sort of adopted from the Hrac committee, did not result in a very diverse committee. So these disparate entities, there's no resident on here. If there was a resident to be in this makeup, then we would select the resident. So these committees, what we wound up on Hrac, no offense to the committee, was a one-woman committee. I don't call that a diverse committee, and that concerns me and concerns others. So I don't know if we have any ideas about how to ensure that this committee is more diverse. I don't know if we could give some guidance to these other committees. But I hear that point, and I'm leery of winding up in that same model again. Lessons learned type of thing, since we're trying to replicate a similar committee structure. You talked about the committee deliverables, so I agree with you. Suggestions might be having ranked, the committee could, and it should be spelled out. Are they ranked options? Is there a point system for options? And the deliverable that is advised to the select board is, here's how the different options we explored floated up to the top or did not float up to the top based on the points we awarded. So in terms of the deliverable, I'd like to see something like that. That would make it clear as to what the committee is gonna come back with. The other concern is the public speaker mentioned earlier, and so did a resident, that we want this to be a public process, not unlike Recalc, not unlike Hrac, because we're doing a survey with that. So what we are not doing in this charge is talking about the public process. And again, that gets back to it's not, the point was well taken, that a committee doesn't make a decision of this magnitude. We send it through a public process, and certainly if that was what our those conversations and how it was presented to town meeting, then we need to honor that.
So if I could, so you're saying in the deliverable, so sorry, where it says shall submit multiple options for development recommendations, you're saying ranked,
Prioritized.
ranked by priority?
So you have it now in there that there's gonna be options, so that's,
Karen, I wrote down, but I don't know if you used these words, evaluation scheme. Just kind of a way to, how they're evaluated, as to, this one is higher than this one.
yeah, when we do with personnel evaluations, like a table, define the criteria, public outreach, cost, benefit, perceived benefits. I mean, I leave the committee to come up with those parameters that by which they would rank the options. But yeah, so inform us what options they used and how the different options fell up in the priority in presenting the recommendations to the select board.
So we're adding for development recommendations using an evaluation scheme
To be determined by the committee.
Point scale,
to be determined by the committee?
Yeah, sure.
Criteria.
Yep.
Sure.
So Caitlin, after development recommendations, can you please add using an evaluation criteria to be determined by the committee?
Karen, your point on public process, I know in
What do we do in Hrac?
Yeah, Hrac and Recalc, we kind of put in specific expectations in terms of public process.
So if we have we just pull up the Hrac charge or Recalc charge. Is that on the website yet? Oh, wait, there's a draft. Oh no, that's the wrong one. It's the same committee. That's not gonna help.
It says gather input from its members and Reading residents. That's always been
Okay.
there. That's always been there.
So that's in this current proposal?
Okay, where is it?
On page, there's page 1, at the top of page 2, still under the purpose.
In looking at Hrac, I think it's what it says the committee shall gather input from its members and the broader community.
Very good. Okay, so that in the, so certainly in the deliverables, then we should see that, however that was done.
Okay, I have a question.
Please, go ahead, Carlo, I'm sorry, I'm busy reading.
That's okay. So I'm just trying to, as you know, any group, committee, a body of people, so if there's, just trying to understand what you're asking. So if 10 options come up, I'm gonna use a high number because that's a lot. If 10 options come up, then obviously we can't dive into the cost of each one. Do you want A, all 10 options, and B, okay, we want a turf field because we need more field space. Is that enough? Or is that an option? We want a school, we want an early education center because we see the population rising for school-age children, and that's option 2, and we base that on data from the, how in detail.
No, I would agree, may I speak, Mr. Chair?
Please.
If I was on this committee and I was talking about really large projects like that, I would be thinking, I need to go back to the select board and show them where we're at before I did any kind of deep diving with town staff. So I hear what you're saying, those are pretty complex.
So Hrac might be a good example, so that there's a set of evaluation criteria and things will get ranked along that. So some of them might be, impacting the most people, long-term cost reduction, very specific to an ARPA or an pandemic impacted group. Those were kind of categories that were looked at, and then things said, well, it's really high on this one, it's low on that one, it's medium on this one. But somehow a way that kind of says, well, this one, we think this one is more beneficial than the next one because it's higher on X and not as good on Y, but it's so much more on X that it makes sense. I think that opens it to, how did we come up with those suggestions?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Chris?
Thanks, Mark. I got a couple questions, ideas, dogs. So I think we need a dog park. Yeah, so I got a couple things. To Karen's point about the diversity of the board, I think there's no real way to control it, but I was proud to nominate Marianne Downing to be chair of Hrac. And it's highlighting how important that her position is on the board, on that committee. And I think she's doing a spectacular job in communicating and the amount of effort she's putting in. So it doesn't matter if you have 1, 10, or 20, as long as there's a strong woman that's on there and she is just, knocking it out of the park every chance she gets. For me, I mentioned last time, and I will reiterate it again, that Birch Meadow has been mentioned since 2007. All we've done is delay. We delay the affordable housing, we delay this, we delay that, because let's wait 6 months, let's do that. I think that if recalc was started 6 months earlier, wouldn't that have been amazing? Because it could have been. If Hrac was started 6 months earlier, that would have been amazing. That would be solving all of these problems. It could have been, but we didn't. Why do we continue to delay things, ironically, by another 6 months? Again, it just seems as if, what is the difference between starting tomorrow and starting in December? None of us here, nor town meeting, is going to approve some magical building on this thing until recalc is done with if a senior center, community center is gonna go there. None of us are gonna go ahead and approve that. I don't wanna speak for everybody, but I'm not going to do that. Why would I do that, and why would town meeting do that? So what is the issue with starting earlier and just having things done? Perhaps the thing comes back and it just shows that, it could go over on lot 5 instead. Who knows? That's where they could recommend for it to go, and then we just lost 6 months because we wanted to lose 6 months. What is the point in losing 6 months? It was discussed last time about changing it to September, not December. I don't see why it has to be bumped out to December to begin with. I think it should be changed back to September. I think that we've discussed Oakland Road and having in public input and everything else, but all of a sudden Fidel presented what he wanted to show us for over there. We were all on board with that. No public input. Lot 5, we bought that. No public input. Town meeting voted for it, yes, but we already know what's going to go there. But where is the public input on that? When is somebody gonna say, now that you own this property, we'd like to see XYZ done with it? We don't have a committee for that. Why is that? There's certain things that are allowed to have committees, certain things that aren't, we're putting stuff off or not. Everything has to be consistent. It's that simple. 1310 Main Street looks amazing over there, the building they put up. We spent more time discussing an acronym on SWAC and SWEC, changing that, than was discussed on 1310 Main Street about buying that lot 3 years ago. The senior center could have gone over there. There's nothing that precluded that from happening then as well. I'm just tired of seeing things move down the road. I don't want to be a part of something that could start now as opposed to 6 months from now. We lose nothing, absolutely nothing by starting it now. I'm not voting for anything to go on this property until recalc is done with its deliverables. Point blank, end of discussion. I'll abstain from everything until then. I don't want to kick this can down the road. I'd like to see it change back to September. I don't care if you add 15 members to the committee. I think taking a FinCom member off is not the right thing to do. They handle the money for the most part in this town. I think not having a member on there just seems like a massive mistake. I don't mind changing it from 7 members to 9 or 10 or whatever number you want to come up with. But I'd like to see this start sooner rather than later. I'm okay with September, not December. I don't see any benefit of waiting then at all. And thank you, Mark.
Jackie, you haven't had a chance to weigh in.
Yeah, a question and then I guess a couple of comments. And perhaps you reiterate, or I'm asking you to repeat yourself, Mark, and forgive me, but what is the timeline for the recalcs results in terms of recommendations? What was their deliverable and timeline?
So there are a couple of pieces. If the question was, when will we have heard about some specific proposals for the board to look at and then decide what to bring to town meeting, the answer is March of '23. If you said, when will we have the results of the survey and when will recalc have put together kind of the pieces to give a charge for the feasibility study, I'd say end of December of '22.
So survey results end of December 22, presentation to us.
So there'll be a presentation of survey results
Right.
and kind of thoughts on senior versus or multi-generational versus community or senior alone, space required or expectations on space that would be used to then come to the select board first.
Yep.
Then go out and do a feasibility study.
Okay.
Feasibility study target January start, results March
Got it.
23.
Okay. Thank you. So just some thoughts on this. I do like the inclusion of the recalc or council on aging member or some other advocate from the senior community. I think we've heard at recalc and in other forums that there's a need to take the lack of services and programming and space for this segment of our population into account. I'm brand new to this, or pretty new to this board, but I do get a sense that we as a board need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, but we need to do it in a way where we don't trip and we don't swallow the gum. And by that, without torturing that metaphor anymore, I mean, we need to be able to look at multiple projects at the same time, move them forward, but with an eye toward the whole and with dependence on town staff, whether it's the town accountant or the town manager or others with subject matter expertise to tell us how a decision with one project would impact the ability to move ahead on another project. And I know we've talked about Killam, talked about Chris mentioned Birch Meadow, potentially a senior or multi-generational center, Oakland Road. We've got a number of these. And so I don't have a strong opinion about September versus December. I am encouraged that, again, there's a member of the senior population included here. I would be in favor of kind of at-large community member, potentially as an appointment that's outside of the board and committee structure. But otherwise, I support the concept of moving forward with a holistic and current view of what our needs are and how the Simons Way property might address them.
Thank you. I agree with most of what Jackie said. Well, actually, yeah, pretty much all of it, except for a couple things. I agree and I'm totally fine with, as speaking for myself, Council on Aging. I don't like the recalc aspect because it's just duplicate of another ongoing board, but I think Council on Aging makes sense. You know, Fidel and I spoke that if recalc didn't exist, would someone from Council on Aging be appropriate? And we both answered yes. Recalc does exist, so I don't want to say it's redundant, but I me personally have no problem with that. On the language that we added, it's not on my screen, about the public aspect of it, that's a reason we had FinCom in there to begin with. You know, 5 for me was never a good number because of quorum mainly. You know, as we discussed with Hrac issues earlier. So 7, fine, I don't mind it being 8. I really like to see someone from FinCom back on there. I'm okay with Council on Aging. I'm okay with the language changes. Exploratory to advisory, you know, tomato, no big deal. And I think that's it. And I would like to start in September. And one of the reasons I want to start it sooner than later, aside from kicking the can down the road, is that we don't know the survey results. And in the end, if the survey results say, let's do an addition, state-of-the-art addition to the Pleasant Street Center, we just lost time. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that is a possibility. So I get what you said, Mark, but there's also the unknown, and there's nothing wrong with more time or starting early, and maybe we'll end early. Maybe we'll take the time and be more thorough. I really don't know. But I'd really like to add FinCom back to the list. I'm afraid an at-large would become political, to be honest with you. They're open meetings, anyone can attend, anyone will be recognized, just like all our committees, meetings. So I'd like to keep it to, I'd like to have 8, not delete one, add FinCom and make a Council on Aging member. Or if you want, you know, senior advocate, if we, you know, whatever, you know, how that's worded is not up to me, but I'm okay with that as well. But I think this recalc, no offense, obviously, I think it's just, you know, it's another burden for that recalc member, another meeting for them to go to, where they can watch it, get updates. We're gonna give updates, just like every committee gives updates. So those are my, which I don't think is a lot. Go to 8, start in September, and let's get going. I mean, we don't know where this is gonna go, but now that we have a kind of a blueprint of what size building we can put on there and many possibilities, and like I said in our last meeting, my goal has always been multi-purpose, whatever that means. I don't know, but to make it just one thing to me doesn't make sense. That's my personal opinion. But maybe that comes out on the top. That's number 1. And because that's the need and that's what the community wants. If everyone comes to the meetings, including the members, say, we want a turf field with lights, with stadium seating and a concession stand. And that's all we talk about. Well, then that's what we present. But I don't know. I'm using that as an example. Could be a school. You know, I don't want to rehash everything. So I'm proposing 8 members starting in September. The other dates are fine. And, you know, let's get going.
So a couple of comments. I think one of the things that we're lacking, truthfully, that would guide us here would be to have a master facilities plan, an up-to-date master facilities plan, saying these are the community needs, these are the things that we want to be building. And then we'd say, okay, here's our land, let's figure out what we want to do with it. that would be great. We haven't updated kind of our major planning documents. The decisions were made that said we're not gonna do that. So we're working from behind because we don't have that master plan, which is really too bad. I think that what we have found clearly is that there is a strong desire to move forward with what is still TBD, but a senior multi-generational community kind of center. I think there's a huge risk in starting this group in September because a freight train could get started moving down the tracks. There could be that opportunity that's once in a lifetime that could make it so that the community needs aren't really met as well as they need to be. There is a plan in place, there's a timeline in place, there are deliverables that are going to be achieved. I think there's a really huge risk in upsetting that. And in thinking about timing, I don't think 6 months, delaying things 6 months or whatever the number of months is, will have any impact whatsoever on this. Even if after we go through the feasibility study and it's maybe the feasibility says, hey, you don't wanna have your community center there, something else should go on. If we had a great process and we achieved the needs of the community and that happened one on time, as we've talked about going through town meeting, the other 6 months behind it, I think we'll have done a great job. I think that would be fantastic. So I can't support something before December. I think that it's just, December is frankly early. I mean, nominally, the best thing to do would be wait till the end of March, but I'm not advocating for that. I think also, one example, there was a discussion about kind of Lot 5 and timing and things on that. We had a right of first refusal expiring. We had literally, we had to deal with it or it went away. So I think that's not probably the right comparison to use. I think Karen's point on diversity in terms of just as we're thinking about different members, I think the committees that would be responsible for appointing members should just keep that in mind. It's kind of on them to think about that, and you know they're very well qualified people, but I take the point of having one woman, one person who's not white, male, whatever. Got it. We have plenty of volunteers. We can make that work. Last point, sorry, 5. I did find the language in recalc, just in terms of how the outreach would work, and it says, through regular meetings and community outreach, recalc will gather, analyze, and organize information for future planning decisions related to the proposed center. It doesn't need to be the exact word, but I think this notion of community outreach, and I haven't looked back to see what the exact words were here, because I was too busy finding it. But I think that may be what we're looking for here. In terms of the membership and kind of who's there, no disrespect to FinCom, I don't think they have a role to play here. The discussion at some point will go forward in terms of different options, recommendations from the select board. It has to go to town meeting, it has to be evaluated by FinCom. They will have their opportunity to weigh in terms of how might we do these things? What recommendation will they be making to town meeting and why? So I'm not worried about them not having a role here. I'm still playing with this idea of an at-large community member, and having one member I think does have the risk that you highlighted, Carlo. So we have to be careful. It probably is, maybe it's 0 or 2, or maybe 0 makes sense for the reasons outlined. But I think we want to make sure that, I think one of the speakers mentioned transparency is a really important piece of this. We really want people to hear different things that are going on. There have been different people who've had some really interesting ideas that we've heard. We've heard of a few different ones already. And the process hasn't started. So summing up, I think what would make sense is to start in December. I'm uncomfortable starting sooner. I think December is tight, but I think that we'll start at least hearing some things about space that would be helpful to the decisions that go on here. I would be really concerned starting earlier would get a freight train going that, once things get going, I think they may be harder to stop, even if we have a good reason for it. In terms of membership, I don't think that FinCom needs to be on the committee. I think that they'll have a role to play, as I mentioned. in terms of who from the senior community, very flexible in terms of who that would be and how. That's it. Anyone else want kind of last licks? Chris?
I'll just follow up on the Lot 5 thing. My comparison on Lot 5 was not us purchasing it. It's us already knowing we're knocking it down, putting a parking lot and having an entrance to the town forest. No member of the public other than town meetings voted or voiced their opinion on that at all. Yet that's what we're doing. And that doesn't follow the lines of transparency. Now, we all know the end result is most likely that's going to be the case. But once again, it just looks as if we are, once again, pigeonholing what we're going to do because we're going to do it kind of thing. That just doesn't make sense with me. If we want to be consistent, everybody is, this meeting, whatever scenario for the SWAC meeting thing is going to be open to the public. I don't think side deals are being made to put a Lowe's over there instead and knock Home Depot down. Like, these kind of scenarios just aren't going to happen. And like I said, by us starting in September as opposed to December or whatever, that's more of because once September or December comes, it now gets pushed off until June, July, and then it becomes Birch Meadow 2007. Because Chris Haley from 2007, whoever he was back then, would be like, oh yeah, we'll just push this off 6 months, 1 year, we'll put on the budget next time. And look where we are now. Like, how is that okay? It just does not sit well with me when we can start something now and just, as I explained, none of us, me personally, is going to vote on anything going on that building. I don't care if they offer us $10 billion. Nothing is completed. That is it. I don't know why that we have to make it seem as if something is going to come along and then, Mark, you're going to change your mind and Karen's going to, me, Carlo, Jackie, and all of town meeting. Like, that scenario is not going to happen, at least for me. I'm speaking on myself. So I see no reason why we shouldn't start earlier, get the ball rolling, and just see what comes of it. And know that it has to be presented to November town meeting. Like, that is, once again, a year and a half away from now. Recalc's gonna have all their stuff done by then. They're gonna be presenting something, I assume, by town meeting. Isn't that what you mentioned? It's the same thing. I'm not gonna be voting on anything going on this lot until recalc is done. I don't wanna be a 6-month kick the can down the road guy at all. So that's where I'm at. Oh, and the members, I mean, I only mentioned FinCom because they're in charge of the money. Just to think that a school committee member should be on there over a FinCom person, I don't know why that makes sense, because to Carlos' point about a school, I don't see us putting a school there with Killam happening. So I know, whatever scenario, but FinCom is gonna have to, they're the ones that handle beyond the town, just the money that we have and how we're gonna be able to do X, Y, Z, and they're gonna review it anyway. So they make more sense than a school committee person. Obviously, permanent building makes sense, conservation, community planning, rec, and, select board. So I don't care, 7, 8, 10 swap members, whatever scenario. I'm not being a 6-month person. I'd like September, and that's the only big change for me.
If I could, just on Lot 5, just to clarify for the public, a couple of things. One, we did get input from a variety of committees before any discussion took place. Second, there isn't a final plan. There is a survey being done, and there will need to be a public process before anything takes place. Just to clarify, so someone listening, there's no done deals. There seem to be desires that have come up multiple times so far that will be discussed, and we'll go through that, see what's going on. Emily, did you have a comment?
Are you entertaining public comments?
I try to be entertaining.
We have to stand up here and be.
Please come to the podium.
Hi, I'm Elisa at 92 John Street, current chair of the rec committee. This is weird, I'm just talking to you guys at this podium, but that's fine. So Chris, you keep talking about Birch Meadow. So I came here, I saw a clip of the last one, heard rec committee member, and I was like, I should probably go, what the hell is happening? Heck is happening? And you keep talking about Birch Meadow as like we're intentionally kicking this down the road. So for me, I've been involved in those conversations since before I had children, and my oldest is 10, so it's been a long time. There have been a lot of iterations of that plan. There's a lot of conversations about what's the highest and best use. The first time we ran the survey, the highest and best use, you know what everybody wanted, was a skateboard park.
Right.
And that is not the highest and best use now, right? So that has gone over and over and over. And what has happened repeatedly is that town meeting ultimately decides where does this money come from and where does this fit into our capital plan. And so far as I could see, I just looked at the last warrant or the report, and there's no mention of Simon's Way anyway for public funding. I saw in the original packet, the first thing was public-private partnerships. From a rec perspective, so full disclosure, I'm on the rec committee, I have a passion for recreation. I would love for Simon's Way to have some rec angle, be a community center, be a recreational facility, be a field, like something like that. It's great open space, it's a great location, it's near the rink, it's near Simon's baseball field, like it could make, a nice little thing. And I totally lost my train of thought, something. I'm sorry, I'm like on 2 hours sleep.
Birch Meadow.
Birch Meadow. Oh, right. So, we come with these plans and then town meeting decides the priorities. And where town meeting has very recently declared let's explore this multi-generational center a priority. I love that there's the recalc thing in place. I love that you're talking about including that conversation in this conversation. What I'm hearing from Mark's perspective is if we have 2 simultaneous committees assessing maybe very similar things, one of those committees is gonna end up wasting their time. If we end up with priorities that are completely at odds, ultimately the select board will have to decide, what do you want that priority to be? And so if the priority comes out of recalc after we've spent $300,000 of ARPA money to, see what are the needs of our seniors, what are the needs of our community, and we say, we want a multi-generational center that has a gym for our seniors and crafting space, or whatever it happens to be, and we want it on Simon's Way, and your concurrent committee comes back and says, we want a turf stadium with 60,000 seats. You gotta decide that, and then that's a tough pill to swallow, and you've got 2 committees who, one is gonna feel like they wasted time, wasted money, wasted effort. You're gonna have town staff that has spent countless nights here. So just having been a part of, I guess they're capital plans, but like project plans and open plans through rec over the last decade, we very infrequently do them concurrently, because if we end up with conflicting things, it's a problem. And not to mention, the public, the money just never seems to come for some of these things, which is fine, because there are other priorities and things take priority. You need a water tower, we need things. So I'm hearing Mark's concern, like we're well down, we are pot committed to recalc right now. We have committed big money to it. And if we get to the end of that and we've got another thing going here and you end up with this crossroad, and for whoever's sitting on the board at that time decides this was the one I wanted that, didn't, then we spend $500,000 or whatever on recalc that we never get back. So that's the concern I'm hearing from Mark. And the repeated calls to Birch Meadow, it's like a pain point for me because we've tried very hard over it, but I'm very excited. We're like actually doing stuff that's gonna be awesome. So I don't know, I'm rambling at this point, but I love the idea of trying to find something to do with the space, honestly. And I think the committee favors some of my personal interests, so I feel great about it. But I also agree with the FinCom piece, with all the capital planning we've done, FinCom comes kind of at the end. Whether they have a seat at the table or not, that's totally up to you guys, but it would be, I don't think it's necessary based on the things that I've done in the last decade. So anyway, thank you for entertaining me, and I'm sorry I just kept talking forever like I always do.
Can I just ask for one
Thank you.
follow-up question? Sorry, Emily, just one follow-up question.
Yeah.
For your pain point.
Ugh.
What prevents the Simon's Way Committee to not becoming what happened with Birch Meadow?
Money.
Money's obviously, but what's gonna prevent Simon's Way from repeating what happened with Birch Meadow? That we might want to put Reading Disney World over there, and we don't have the funding, and now we wanna put, a globe over there, a Ferris wheel, like, what prevents?
I think this is not me as a rec committee member, this is just me as a citizen with my, like, what I've seen. It all depends fully on emergencies. Like, things come up and things need money, and schools are gonna get money before open space redevelopment. Police, fire, public works, they all, you got a bajillion-dollar fire truck go down. There's money that, we don't need to we don't need to resod the baseball field this year. And when you're talking about a really big expenditure, so some of the elements of the Birch Meadow Master Plan are gonna cost big money. So, down the road, our eventual hope is to dig up those 3 softball fields, relay it, regrade it, put down turf, put in beautiful state-of-the-art facilities. That's like $3 million in today's dollars. So by the time we get to it, it's gonna be however much. And that's a big ticket item that when you bring that to the floor at town meeting, a lot of people are gonna say no because, they wanna see great schools because great schools bring their home values up. Baseball fields don't. And so I think it's gonna depend entirely on what that committee does decide for Simon's Way. If they decide something that the sitting board at the time feels really passionately about and that town meeting can fully rally behind, I think it has a better chance to stay on. But things that are seen by the majority of the community as a nice to have and not a need to have is what has continually happened with Birch Meadow. We've been on and off the capital plan so many times, which is fine because, my kids go to a good school because they, that's where town meeting decided to put that money instead of putting it into a baseball field that would look good and be great for surrounding communities to play at. So the short answer is, I don't know.
Yeah, but if I could add to that answer, one of the things that I think has been different most recently for Birch Meadow is that this board prioritized it in terms of capital plan activities and potentially ARPA activities. So that kind of helped it bump. But to your point, stuff happens and you gotta be careful. And town meeting next, and potentially with some of these projects, maybe even voters directly, at least indirectly through town meeting in terms of funds going through. And I think the answer really is that, we, as a board, are gonna, and we're gonna talk about this at the retreat, have some ideas and some goals that we're gonna wanna talk about pushing forward in the next year plus of time. Great, that's what we should be talking about. That's how are we gonna get that stuff done? Understanding that we don't have full control, but we have control over what we recommend.
Just like we have control of what we recommend, and then we get set. So, sometimes, but not always, not recently.
And now it's moving. Other new comments? Otherwise, what I was gonna suggest is that I think that there's a lot of good stuff. It may largely be captured. With the board's indulgence, let's capture it. Let's share it with everybody. Let's have kind of last views, any last comments that we vote at a meeting on the 28th, 6th, whatever it is. What's the date? 8th. 28th. So our next formal meeting. But everybody has a chance to kind of look at it in kind of the latest form. It sounds like there is still a couple of things to be thought through. But we can have a clean look at it. We can kind of have the last thing and then just decide what to do. That would be my suggestion. How do the members feel?
I like the progress we've made, and I can see that we've been at this for a bit and we could maybe use some time to reflect. But I like the progress we made, I don't wanna go back.
Yeah, and not a forever process either. I think we're getting good input, I think we're making good progress. I think everybody looking at it clean is a really good idea, and then let's see if we can nail it.
I think, sorry.
Please.
Thanks, Mark. I think for me it'd be hypocritical to mention bumping it by 6 months and then bumping this another meeting and being okay with that. if that's what the majority of us decide, then so be it. But for me, I think that it seems as if the only thing to be in discussion is whether or not September or December.
I think there's still a couple of questions on members.
I mean, I'm fine with however that's presented right now. I don't know if you want to take a feeling of how everyone else is, but it's only the date for me. I'd hate to come back for another meeting and rehash all of this again, if it's only a date. So that's how I feel.
So to me, I'm still thinking on members as well as date. And others do.
We did get in some input from the Council on Aging today, which is new information. Generally, as I said, I feel like we made progress, and I'm not looking to start this. And Emily, great job explaining exactly the collision course I was feeling that we were on, and the need to not go there and set people up to waste their time. I think there's nothing wrong with figuring out what to do with that property, because I was in town meeting and I was on the finance committee, and no real uses were really presented. It was just an opportunity like Lot 5. So that was my perspective.
Question, I pulled up the, I guess the charge of the recalc, and I noticed that we've got a select board representative, Mark, we've got a council on aging, a rec committee, and then 4 at-large members from the community. And I assume the select board approved this charge or establishment similar to what we're talking about here. Can someone provide some background about why there were so many? I mean, the majority of the membership is at-large appointments. And I'm not criticizing it, I'm just trying to understand why that was the case. Because I do take the point that it might not be feasible or appropriate to appoint at-large community members. So I guess I'm thinking about withdrawing that suggestion, but want to understand more from the recalc precedent.
So from my perspective, my input on it was that we were encouraging broad community support and therefore needed to reach out. We wanted to get a variety of different backgrounds. We wanted some people who frankly use the current senior center or council on aging programs, and just a variety of different groups, and then to have it run through VASC. And we did pick a substantial number to really encourage that outside input. We already have the council on aging having meetings and discussions. That was already there. We were trying to broaden the appeal. And that was the reasoning from my perspective. Karen did a lot of crafting on this also, so.
Recalc? No, that was you.
This is all me? Okay,
seemed like
so take that back. That
but
was
you're
me.
right. So it was interesting. Your point, Jackie, is interesting. It was like the community members that were most passionate about this particular topic seemed to come forward. So we just started off from with a different perspective, sort of basing it on another completely different structure, and that's where we're at versus it could have gone either way. It could have been a recalc type of membership start, or it could have been the Hrac, and it ended up being Hrac. So that's I think that's the only reason why we're here. Just started based on Hrac, I guess.
Mark?
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, so that was a good explanation, and I think from my experience then observing meetings years prior to getting elected, we usually don't have that many at large. But this made sense and we all supported it. So and right, we don't want to start over, but you know, when Fidel and I sat down, this version made more sense. Because we want it to be as less political as possible. The senior center, community center, not that this will become political in this format, but an at-large format it can become that way. But for me, I'm okay with as written, take off recalc, council on aging, and start in September. So if that takes one more week, I can vote on that now, but if that takes one more week, if everyone's comfortable, and one more meeting, I'm fine with that too, but those are my only suggestions. I get the FinCom aspect of it, I'm okay with that. So keep these 7, make it more defined on council on aging so we don't have, double meetings going on. And I disagree with, I think, Mark, you're prejudging a little bit, and that's fine, that's your opinion. But if we didn't have a senior center at all, then Emily would be 100% correct. That we're going like this. But we do have a senior center. As inadequate as it is, we do have one. So that's where I see it differently. Because we don't know the surveys yet, we don't know the outcome. Most of the seniors say, no, I love this location. I love that I can go get a coffee after. I love that I can meet someone first and then go do a class. We don't know. So if we didn't have a senior center, then I'm like, yes, this committee makes no sense. But we do. So, so for me, I think everyone knows where I stand. September 7, that's it. If it takes one more meeting, I'm okay with that too. I just don't want it to,
Yeah, that's right.
keep on going, right?
What
It's,
folks think about now versus waiting another week? Sorry, another 2 weeks. Any strong opinions?
I don't, if we're looking for a broad consensus, I don't think we're gonna get it tonight, because this was presented, and now you wanna change it again, and there's a lot of really good reasons to start it, however you worded it, no later than December, no earlier than December.
In December, I think it's even better.
It makes no sense, it makes no sense, so, and it hasn't been on the capital plan, so I think tonight I'm gonna have a hard time supporting, like, changing it on the fly. We made some good progress, and I think this work will get done. And fall is very busy around here with town meeting, with financial forums, with Hrac still ongoing. I don't know when that will wrap up, it could go till the end of the year. Recalc is still going. There's only so many nights and people available to do this. I would really strongly encourage you to stick with this plan that you presented this evening, or that we were presented with.
Jackie, any thoughts?
I mean, I also agree that, the finance committee, I think can be left off, and again, I'm using the recalc as kind of a predicate for this, which may or may not be a great fit. I'm less concerned about the September start, so long as the inputs to this committee are inclusive of not only kind of one segment of the population's needs or one use, but of a broader use. And so I think, similar to Carlo, if that's tonight or on the 28th, I'm okay either way.
So I don't vote, obviously, right? But what I saw in the Hrac meeting is that the first 2 meetings were more organizational, right, in nature. It was who's the chair, who's the vice chair, when are our meetings, what's the structure. So would it be a suggestion to strike in between September and December and pick a date in between?
You folks know me not to usually be intransigent, but I'm intransigent on this one.
Can I ask
It makes no sense to start that before we have any feedback and thinking from a committee whose purpose is to put together a charge for a feasibility study. It just makes no sense. And taking 2 meetings or whatnot to organize, there is no fire here. We're artificially creating one, and that's a mistake. We have something that's going through a planning process that's very clear and appropriate. Let it do its job. Let it happen. 6 months, I'm sorry, 6 months doesn't really make any difference at all on that. And it has the opportunity to do it right, to serve the communities, to be transparent, and to not, we've received a number of letters. There's a concern. And basically, I think we deserve to listen to that.
okay, one quick question, sorry, last one. Let's say, based on the survey, because everything's hypothetical right now, it's unclear. There's 1,000 respondents. It's a balance of renovate, new, not Simon's way, and then, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Feasibility Study Committee, company, that's what we're presenting, you go, is that, I mean, there's no plan yet, right?
Correct. But what may come from that is, let's say there isn't clear, it may be saying, okay, feasibility study, look at, I'm making the numbers up, 15,000 square foot option, that's more modest in scope.
Right, you mentioned that last time, right, yeah.
25 or 30,000 square foot community center facility. Do that in the feasibility study, look at both. And one location potentially is Simon's Way, as you said, kind of in a multi-use sort of format. I'm concerned that it would be a mistake to not allow that to kind of get to that point for the sake of a couple of months. It feels wrong. It feels like it risks, kind of following the plan that the town seems to be supporting right now.
Quick question. How would this committee be able to put together an RFP or a procurement, be able to put together an RFP without the results of the feasibility study? Is that gonna be possible?
So the what I modeled was the process that Wellsleep did, right? And they put out a few RFPs. Essentially, the first one was more an RFI, a request for information, and it was a Hail Mary, like we've got this. Please respond with your ideas, right? I mean, it was very broad. So that was the first one, and then they then refined it further and further. So it was a total of the first one was a request for.
They do a Hail Mary. I think we need to know if we're gonna use staff time and use volunteer time and treat the committee seriously, that they need to know what the RFI or the RFP looks like. So I'm having a hard time seeing how they would put out an effective RFP or a more concrete RFI if they get to that point without having looked at the results of the feasibility study. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, look, I think December is a compromise. I think that if we were to let the process play out, we'd wait till March.
Yeah.
And a case could be made for that, and I'm not suggesting that. I think December is a reasonable time frame. I think there's some benefit to having some notions on space that come from retail that are inputs to this group in terms of thinking about, hey, we ought to be thinking about the potential for A or B. And how might that make sense here? Or not. It might not. And to I'm not sure whose point it was before, but someone said, it may be that there's another space that's identified for senior activities. Awesome, great, super. I think that there's just too much risk of getting in the way of we already have this wonderful path going. Let it go to December, have this dovetail with it, literally. I think that's what makes, I just having trouble not thinking of it that way, sorry. So let's make a decision, either we're gonna decide tonight or we're gonna push to the next meeting. My gut is that look at a clean version, get all of our kind of final thoughts together and move it to a vote on next meeting. But if the will of the board is different. So I think I heard either way, tonight, next meeting.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't think it's a problem waiting. Either way.
Either way, okay, I'm gonna suggest that we take this version, publish it now if we can, kind of as preliminary minutes from the meeting so everybody can see it. See if there's any last minute whatever in terms of whatever, but it seems that date, final membership questions, it sounds like we haven't talked so much about anything else after that. I think we kind of came to getting close. And do that and then put it up as an early agenda item for the 28th. That's my suggestion.
Are you okay? Thank you. that's fine. Are you okay with, so we have a clean version? Nothing personal, eliminating recount member and start the sentence with Council on Aging, just so it's more clear.
Do you want, where's the senior advocate, where's that from? What were you thinking with that? It really-
I didn't put that
Interested,
in.
I think he's saying
Oh.
just eliminate recalc and leave it as council on aging or senior advocate. Because Carla, I have to tell you, from the meeting last night, they were feeling pinched for resources, even just doing the regular programming, so I think that second part is probably a good idea to leave that in there. They may need to go recruit somebody to be a senior advocate.
Yeah, I don't have a problem
right,
saying
that's
that.
what you're
I'm saying,
saying.
I didn't
Okay.
word
Yeah.
that personally, sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted for clarification,
I think
start-
that's reasonable.
start at Council on Aging, like,
Yeah.
we, you know,
I think
that's all.
That's fine.
How do you feel? Does that work for you?
just so when
Yes.
just so at the next meeting, anyone,
Yep, I think
2-minute drill, and then let's vote.
kind of stuff, 4 harumps. You got a harumph? Okay, we got 5 harumps.
Moving on.
Okay, that's the plan. Thank you. We are at vote to approve budgets for Historical Commission, Trails Committee, and Town Forest Committee, page 28.
Okay, so as you all remember, we made a change to the budgets for these committees where they are now in a select board line. So you might recall that we set up a process for the committees to come back to us, and with a request, the Historical Commission requested that their budget remain the same at $1,500. The Trails Committee requested a modest $3,000 where it was $1,500 before. And the Town Forest Committee sent me a request for $5,000, and that did not make it into the packet. But Caitlin, if you could pull up the email from Bill Sullivan. Essentially, what he is presenting to Hrac tomorrow, and just highlighting the fact that the red pines are a problem in the town forest, and he is saying basically that the planning process of a forest cutting plan is being is expensive, but he does acknowledge that this request will not be in perpetuity. And once the dead red pines are removed, town forest can go down to their normal funding request. So just to recap, the historical commission is requesting that their funding be the same as before at $1,500. The Trails Committee is requesting $3,000, and the Town Forest Committee is requesting $5,000.
And Fidel, how much money did we have allocated for the combination of those?
$15,000.
15 total.
15.
So this would be,
Our select board fund?
yeah, within the operating budget.
Yep.
So this would be 9.5.
Yep.
As proposed out of that 15.
That's correct. Yeah, and how I explained to the committee is that if something came up, in the middle of the year, then they would have to follow the same process.
Same process being to make a request.
Correct. Yep. A request to me, I would present it to the select board, and at the time I would remind you what is left in the budget, right, and what is what's remaining to be allocated.
And this is the approved fiscal 23
Yeah.
budget.
Correct. FY23 budget, $15,000 from the select board line.
Cool. Questions, comments?
No, I'm totally fine, and I know it wasn't formal, but we all agreed as a board to fund each of these committees as they were funded. And this goes, these are a little bit different, but I have no problem with it.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, for me, it's the same, and ironically, I've been to the town forest numerous times since I said that I was never there before. So I did see firsthand about the red pines and all the issues that come with that, and then having to replant things and everything. And 5,000 seems low to me, but that's what they're requesting, and I am fine with it.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm also supportive of it and thankful that we have neighbors and volunteers who are willing to help keep up with the trail maintenance. Just a question for the request on packet page 28. There's $850 towards something called stock.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's a wood basically.
Okay.
So it's like
That's what I
the
thought.
yeah.
Okay, but no, I support it. Thanks.
Chris, I didn't know if you saw the Japanese knotweed yet. It's right at the entrance. The big leaves,
Have not.
it's everywhere. When someone points it out to you, like it's everywhere. So the trail committee, this strikes me as, I'm glad the town forest is being a little more proactive because we've been letting the forest take care of itself and now we've got deferred maintenance. I worry about the trails committee as well. There was some vandal burned a whole section of the trails, and to your point, they're somehow doing this all with their own labor and only asking for stock. So if that's all they're asking for, that's all they're asking for. But as we go into budget seasons, maybe we could ask them if they're taking more risks than they need to with their own shoulders and hips and everything else, and whether the budget's really appropriate for the miles of trails that we have. That's all. The rest of it looks great to me.
Yeah, I'm in agreement too. We have a motion?
Yeah, and just one follow-up real quick. I believe Kathy Kelly's coming tomorrow in requesting money for arbors, so that will somewhat cover, I think it's $9,000 or something. So
Okay.
that's
Okay, good.
that's why
Great.
it's only this low amount here. I think it's
Thank you.
supplemented. But move to allocate $1,500 to the Historical Commission, $5,000 for the Town Forest Committee, and $3,000 to the Trail Committee from the FY23 Select Board budget line.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jackie. Any discussion? Let's take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, 5-0. Future agenda items. Well, we created one. 28th, the 28th is in the packet. We can actually see it, right?
Yeah.
It is on page, which page is it at the end?
I think it's at the end.
Yeah, it is,
Page 50.
yep, 50.
28th.
ARPA funding for Maylette Homes and Morgan Stormwater, Regional Affordable Housing Intermunicipal Agreement, remote meeting legislation update. Yeah, so we have plenty of room on the 28th.
Excuse me, Mark, I thought we had a regional housing agreement already.
We do not. We well, I guess
Confusing it
we
with
kind of
something
do.
else?
Yeah, no, we had a full-time person
Okay.
in-house that handled the 5 communities. As part of the FY23 budget, we have eliminated that position and we're going to outsource it to
Okay,
a
all
company.
right, and okay, I knew there was something.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Do we have safety, public safety?
Correct. Yep.
Someone's gonna come.
That's right. So Chief Burns, I asked him to come and do a staff report, basically, just to catch us up on their new hires. They had a 4 firefighters start just the other day, and there's quite a lot of exciting things going on over there. We will also need to vote on the VASC recommendations. So
Right.
At the next meeting?
and
Those will be done in advance of that.
Yeah, we have one more
Yes.
next Monday.
Yes.
Or maybe not, or Wednesday.
Monday or Tuesday.
So
Okay.
we need to vote on the council.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
Not on there yet.
School building committee
Right, yeah.
representative.
School building committee needs to be on there.
Yes. And folks, maybe what we should do, each of us is take a look down on the bottom of page 51. And there are items that are just kind of on a list, but not necessarily prioritized or dated in any ways. See if there are some of those that we wanna.
Oh, the very bottom?
Yeah, it says future meeting agenda items.
Yeah, I see.
Also, just more kind of in between that, the Cultural Council, when it reconvenes in its next program year, will be preparing for their state grant timeline. And so they had floated the idea of presenting to us on September 13th. So at that inn. And that timeline works for them because they will need to have in place a process to award state money to grantees in kind of the November timeframe.
Did we talk about inviting our legislators back? What would be the right timing?
September 13th is the date that we're shooting for. And I did reach out to Seth Moulton's office, and I invited him as well.
Do you need our help? Should we,
No, I mean,
you know what, I need to call
he's
Mr. Moulton.
he's been responsive. I mean, he's helping us with the earmark request for Mount Liaison. So
I haven't seen him in town in a little while. I really miss him. How about, I have a suggestion. Why don't we strike public safety badge pinning ceremony and just make that future meetings agenda items list a little bit shorter, because we had a fantastic badge pinning ceremony. We took care of 29 new staff members, and like that's done for now. So we can make that list a little shorter.
We can get rid of Simon's Way property.
Oh, is that on there? Yeah, sure. Oh, this is awesome.
And this one was a new one for me. I didn't know Chris and I were in charge of a
Yes, we
resolution clarifying official town website. What is that?
I already have it written with Ivrea, but I will have it removed as well.
Okay.
Okay.
The flag policy, it's at the top of, it looks like page 52.
I think where we left it is to revisit it.
Okay,
and,
just, that's what I thought.
maybe on a quarterly basis, but as updates take place.
Yes, okay.
To think about that.
I think more on the public safety badge pinning, it's obviously not something now because we just went through it, but I think it should still be on there for the future for.
Yeah, it used to be, like
We
pre-pandemic,
usually do it here.
pre my service,
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
a regular
On a regular
agenda item.
basis,
Yeah.
as things are happening.
Like we have 4 new firefighters
Yeah.
that got hired right after that pinning ceremony.
Oh, great, so let's invite. Sure. And when we do that, I think the preference was like right away, right? Like at 7 or even 6:30 in some cases?
yes, correct.
Cool, so we can accommodate that.
Mark, I'm glad you brought this up because I never looked this far down. And Emily happens to be here. Are you awake, Emily? Yes, Emily's awake. And I know maybe this might not be appropriate, but I'll ask the board. Is there discuss early Sunday hours on recreational fields and parks scheduled for it's not scheduled for December, I'm sorry, but to me that should be a topic that we should get a presentation on. Given we're going into summer, and that's just, rec camp stuff, not organized sports. And then next fall, we'll go back to organized sports. So I guess that one kind of stands out to me, that,
This one keeps getting, pardon the pun, batted around.
well, yeah, and then I think.
Sunday hours at recreational fields and parks, so, I mean, we've heard from rec members on this. And occasionally it gets kind of tempted to get
how
pushed
long-
onto us.
In my 2 years, I don't recall having a conversation about Sunday hours, honestly. Do you, Karen?
No one was on the
So-
fields, like,
I-
yes, no,
yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
very
It was
high
probably- it was
priority.
pre-
Well, yeah, good point.
It was letting their kids out of their
It was
houses.
probably near pre-COVID, so.
Okay, all right,
it was
that makes
3 years
sense.
ago. It was the last time, so, yeah, I had been kind of pushing this and I got pushed back pretty hard. But it's a discussion of, how to utilize fields and facilities.
And
And
I
I said,
Yeah.
Emily has shared her head motions with us as well.
Bad head motions back here.
said no, or just you're just tired.
If you wanna have that conversation, save 2 to 3 hours for it.
On your time.
Yeah, so
On your committee.
let's, why don't we,
When it has come to the select board in the past,
Wow,
it is a hotly contested
okay.
situation.
let's do this, we can,
That's
Yeah.
fine, no, I'm
it
not,
can be something on our agenda to discuss if and how we want to approach it.
and I think, excuse me, last one, I think it's probably coming, but I think we should put on the agenda either the next one or no later than the next one in July, update on Summer Ave. I think
Yes.
we're probably due for an update on that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's been a little bit.
And I wonder if we can check in with CPDC about Airbnb, if they have any, if they've moved ahead with any policy decisions. I think it's kind of dependent on them. what their next step is.
I wonder if somewhere else could be an executive session, whether
I think it would
whether it
probably
should
be.
need to
Well,
be an
I don't
executive
know.
session
For ARB, for 186 somewhere else.
or
186
somewhere
somewhere.
else, just to keep things in even keel. So I recently took a look at the audit report for the Reading Ice Arena, and the town has a lease for the ice arena, which is up in March of 2023. Was wondering if we want to pull that forward to August to September to sort of, it says Reading Ice Arena report, but just kind of get an initial conversation going. I've never seen the lease, I don't know what it looks like,
They haven't had any meetings
yeah.
that I'm aware of.
So, hey, why don't they, yes. Well, that would, if we did it in August or September, that would give you time to reach out to them. I don't know if they realize we need to
Right.
talk about that.
How does that report into the town? Is it just to the select board, or does it come through staff?
Great question, I'm not sure.
Why don't we explore that first? Let's see what.
That's a good point, and I think, again, this is different because it's it's a town entity and a lease is a lease, but most leases have provisions of when they're gonna renew, it's like a 6-month notice. So maybe have town council look at when do they have to give us notice that their intent is to renew, obviously, I'd imagine, but they might say, see you later, and then we know. But I think most leases have that, some kind of provision. This might not, it might go 30-day notice, but most commercial leases some are 6 months to a year on notice.
October would be 6 months, so if we get them in like August.
Yeah, can we ask staff to get kind of the specifics?
Absolutely.
And what the terms are?
Yep.
And then
I will do that.
figure out what the right timing would be.
Yeah.
I just realized also, we've proposed on the 28th to have our meeting start at 6, have a joint meeting with the RMLD. So I think we're waiting to hear back from the RMLD, is that right, Kate?
I think we heard from everybody.
I don't know if everybody responded.
They'll have a quorum at that time, so you can move forward with that.
Yep. Okay, so we should post for 6, they'll
Yeah.
post for 6, and then they'll leave it 7.
We'll post it as
Two,
Yeah.
both, two.
Two separate meetings.
2 separate meetings, one for 6, and then the regular meeting for 7.
Right, and meeting here.
Yes.
And have we been posted for every RAC meeting? I think we have, right?
Yes.
That's an ongoing
Yes.
process in case,
Yeah.
okay.
That's been a good call. Okay,
I'll be in Florida for the 28th, but I'll be on Zoom. Unless I'm murdered for doing so, then I won't be.
all good, all good.
I'm at Space Mountain and I'm walking to
Actually, I'm in line for Space Mountain.
I'm in line, okay.
Let's move
Frozen.
to minutes. Frozen, yeah. I had some comments on minutes that I sent to Caitlin.
I did too.
Yeah, there are a couple. I have Karen's. I'll put Karen's first. Do I have them right here? Does it need to be bigger?
Yeah,
Go
please.
bigger, yeah.
Tad more would be great,
Have more?
like 10%. Thanks.
Is that better?
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Sorry, what's the word?
What?
The committee.
Oh,
Just, I like nouns and less pronouns, it just
Got it.
makes it easier
Okay.
to read.
Instead of they. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't remember.
I'll get that.
Thank you.
just because we won't remember who the heck that is, and I don't remember what firm she's with.
Got it.
Okay,
Yeah, Krista, yeah.
That was it for Karen. Oh, nope, one more.
Okay.
That's it. So that was it for Karen, so everyone good with that?
Yes.
What's that?
Hmm?
Okay. And mine was pretty easy, just added a little detail about the Board of Health recommendation regarding 5-member, moving to 5 members.
oh,
It
yeah,
wasn't mentioned what their opinion was,
oh,
so it's, yeah, the Board of Health update, right before the Board of Health adjourned. Yeah, you can go big, please. It said 3 worked for him, but he didn't object to 5.
right,
Just wanted it in the record about what was the feeling about a 5-member board?
yeah, that's been an ongoing discussion for a long time.
So,
And I know we're jumping items, but we received the legislation language from town council, so that I would like to add it to our next meeting, just to review it and formally vote on that language
For the Board of Health,
for the Board of Health.
Yes.
that'd be a charter change.
Is that a whole?
It is.
It's a language for the,
It's the language for the charter change.
oh,
Yeah.
I thought it would be good for us to review it, make sure we're all good
Oh,
with it
okay.
before it moves on.
yeah, gotcha,
Home rule.
Whole petition.
okay, yep,
And then these are Jackie's changes. Right here in purple. Was there anything else, Jackie, or was that it?
I think I just had there was just at the Zani property, just moving a period inside the quotes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right here. Okay.
Cool.
So is everyone good with those? That was it?
mhm.
Alright, so I'll put those all together. None of them are overlapping.
We have a motion, please?
Yep, move to approve the meeting minutes of May 31st, 2022 as amended.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, 5-0. Entertain one more motion, please.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jackie. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, 5-0. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
We are adjourned.